ask each other, like, what are your core feelings or beliefs or values about certain issues that maybe we're not agreeing on, and I'm not accepting influence, or you're not accepting influence. Or maybe there is an area in their life where they're so inflexible, and why is that important, right? What do we agree about as a couple? What are our common goals? And how can we achieve these goals? Or how can we even have a temporary compromise? Because that may be even just part of it is having a temporary compromise and agreeing like, oh, shopping for Christmas is not your jam. How can we come up with a compromise? Instead of me getting upset that I didn't get a gift for Christmas, maybe we can come up with an agreement like, okay, what is the dollar amount you want to spend on my Christmas gift? Give me that dollar amount and I'll go buy me a Christmas gift. At least that's what happens in our house, right? So we are really trying to work on expressing ourselves from a place of understanding each other, and this work is really for both of us. You're listening to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast with Shira Bergbauer, episode number 93. I hope you are having a great Monday, and I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving holiday if you were observing Thanksgiving, and I hope you just had a good weekend if you weren't. In the United States, we were celebrating Thanksgiving, those that observe it. This may have been an interesting time for many, spending time with family, partners, spending time with your kids being on winter, Thanksgiving break. So it's definitely been a jam-packed weekend for many of you, and you're just returning to work today. So enjoy the episode. Hey, Mama, you deserve a life free of overwhelm and burnout. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I'm your host, life and mindset coach, Shira Bergbauer. I'm also a wife, mom, and CRNA. This is the podcast for high-achieving mamas in medicine like you and I. Together, we'll learn how to navigate the ups and downs of working motherhood. If you're looking to thrive in your relationships and overcome overwhelm in your motherhood, marriage, and medicine, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. What I've been wanting to focus on during this holiday season is some of the emotions that maybe we experience during this time of year and some of the issues that we may be facing, and kind of focus on that during the holiday season to get you through the holidays seamlessly. Today, what I want to talk about is when it comes to conflict in your relationships and how to kind of manage that. As I was thinking about this, I'm really thinking more about Christmas and what comes up around the holidays, when this is at least what I see from moms and wives, and the holidays are coming and you feel that your partner is not maybe thinking about the mental load of parenting, and you're feeling like you're the one doing all the things, planning the holidays, getting the family together, doing the shopping, buying the gifts, wrapping the gifts, decorating, cooking, figuring out what family members are going to get for the holidays, all of that. And then a lot of the complaints that I see is around Christmas time is, I went all out, I did all the things, and my partner didn't get me a gift, or I just felt overworked and I'm feeling resentful. And so I wanted to share this episode ahead of time to maybe help you kind of navigate some of those conflicts that may come up this time of year and kind of maybe be ahead of it so that maybe that eases it for you, or at least makes it easier for you to process any conflict that you may have and modify maybe conflict that you may have. So what I wanted to share with you is just some insights on some of the conflicts and some of the ways maybe you can tune in to managing conflict constructively in ways that maybe will create intimacy and understanding from that conflict. So I want you to think about a situation maybe you've had recently with your partner or a friend or a family member. In the situation, how you felt about the person and what your thoughts were about the person and like the emotions that came up. It doesn't even have to be complex. It could just be mad, sad, glad. We don't have to overcomplicate it. And I want you to think about in that situation, what maybe could have gone differently or better. What maybe you want to do next time. With that in mind, if there was a conflict involved, hopefully some of the tips that I share on today's episode will get you through some of those moments. One of the things we have to first acknowledge is that not all conflict is the same. In conflict, there are three goals really when we're trying to solve for conflict in the dynamic of like discussing conflict and maybe processing it. And one is for both the people in the conflict to understand each other's point of view. The second one is that if any of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, that is criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt are present, that we notice them, we know that they're there, we eliminate them, and we replace them with their antidotes. And if you have not listened to the episode on the four horsemen of the apocalypse, I will refer you back to episode number 72. And in that episode, I explained the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And then the fourth goal is for us to move from an area of gridlock and to dialogue, especially on existential conflict. Because a lot of the conflict we have, like I've mentioned before, almost 69% of that conflict, according to the Gottman Institute, is around perpetual issues. When we have perpetual issues, we're not going to be able to agree fully. We just agree to disagree. What I want to share with you today is some skills that we can maybe start practicing in our conflict resolution in marriage in order for us to create constructive conflict management. We cannot have a relationship devoid of conflict. That is not going to happen. We will always have a disagreement. We will always have, a misunderstanding. What I want us to get towards is when we have those misunderstandings, how can we navigate that? How can we listen better? I was thinking about a situation. I hosted a workshop a while back. In that workshop, I had couples. It was a couples workshop. I had this one couple, and it was interesting to me. After the workshop, they both reached out individually. What was interesting to me was that they both wanted the same thing in their marriage, but they were not articulating it to each other. And so I think we don't really focus on, okay, if we're not agreeing and we both want the same thing, how can we communicate so that we both get to that resolution? So I really wanted to do that episode with this in mind and really touch on some of those areas. So the 6 skills that I was thinking about is the skill of practicing a gentle startup in a conversation, the skill of accepting influence from each other. Number 3, making effective repairs when we have conflict. Number 4, de-escalating fights. Number 5, compromising. And number 6, physiological self-soothing. When we have fights or regrettable incidents, and maybe we still go through the motions and have something, say things and do things that we regret, in order for us to get moving in our relationship, we also have to know how to process that. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is just the gentle startup. When you think about the gentle startup, it's how we start the conversation to help the other person listen, and also we validate their experience of what's happening. One of the things we have to think about in a gentle startup, even before we start that conversation, is to really transform our mindset from that of blaming and criticism, so that when we have a complaint that we want to bring up, when we want to have a gentle startup and maybe we want to tell the person what we feel, we have to tune into that, and we have to listen from that perspective. And so the first part of it is to show up without blame, criticism, or contempt, right? Being very clear about using you statements. So starting the conversation instead with I statements and being very specific about the I. So recently there was a conversation in one of the groups that I'm in, and the mom was upset because the husband spends a lot of time on his device, and she's like, I want to give him all the articles to read, and can you guys share with me some articles? He doesn't listen. He's not this. And what I offered her was, when you show up from that energy of you, the person shuts down. So what are you experiencing? And so I was telling her, like, you can even say, I feel unsupported, when it comes to childcare in the evenings. I feel frustrated that I'm doing a lot versus you never help or you don't do anything. You don't listen. You don't help. Like, just see how that even lands for you when I say that, if somebody is saying that to you. And then talk about your feelings and your experiences. And there, when you can really state your positive need in the gentle startup, what we know is that behind every complaint, even this complaint of, your partner is on their device and they're not spending, there's a longing, right? And that's what we really want to get to the bottom of, is how do we express that longing? Because when we express the longing, the recipe for how we can fulfill that longing, our partner can fulfill that longing, is then expressed. So if you think about, like, when we are in that negative state and we really search for, like, why do we feel terrible? And what we start to do is, like, we scan the environment for what other people are doing wrong, and we want to blame them and find their mistakes. And another thing we do sometimes is, I hear from my clients, they're like, I don't like conflict. My husband doesn't like conflict. So what they actually do is they stockpile those resentments and they stockpile what their partners are doing wrong. And then when the conflict comes, they're like, here are all the receipts I have. And it explodes, right? So, sometimes when what happens then is, like, we have this, like, explanation of the person's behavior and we come up with a you statement. Like, it's like, this is all the things I have. So one of the most important things is to literally work on letting go of grudges and bitterness. Like, if you didn't express it in real time, then it's on you to process it and, like, move on from it in your own time, because telling your partner about things they did 6 months ago or 6 years ago is not serving your relationship. When one psychologist, Thomas Gordon, actually noticed that when people receive a statement that begins with you, they are generally more defensive. So the first thing you can do is just, like, start saying, how I'm experiencing it. What is happening to me, right? And then when you are trying to express a need using that softened startup, doing it in the positive, like expressing the positive need, right? Expressing that. So that is the most important thing about a positive need, is that we want our partner to shine for us. That is the need we're asking for, right? Here's an example. Let's say you say to your partner, you always talk about yourself and you don't listen to me and you didn't ask me how I'm doing. The positive need we could be trying to express is, hey, I need you to ask me about my day. I need you to check in on and ask me how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what is happening in my world, so that I can communicate that with you, right? So that I can tell you what I want or what I'm desiring or what's happening in my world. But if you start talking about yourself, I don't get to do that. So notice how when I started with, I need you to versus you never or you always, the dynamic is totally different, right? Now, the second skill we're going to talk about is accepting influence. One of the things I want you to remember is that you cannot influence your partner unless you accept your partner's influence. When you want to understand the dynamic and how you and your partner can get along, some of the things you might have to work on is the art of compromising and solving problems as a partner, right? So listening to what the needs are in your relationship and then creating an environment where compromise feels safe for both of you. So what may be important is, before you even decide what you're going to compromise in, is noticing what maybe you're not willing to compromise and checking in with your partner. Like, what do they not want to compromise? What is different for them? Accepting influence can really be critical. And one of the things in the research, if you're a man listening to this, is that it's usually when the men are not accepting influence that there's a little more of a problem than when the women are not accepting influence. So maybe what we can do is ask each other, like, what are your core feelings or beliefs or values about certain issues that maybe we're not agreeing on, and I'm not accepting influence, or you're not accepting influence. Or maybe there is an area in their life where they're so inflexible, and why is that important, right? What do we agree about as a couple? What are our common goals? And how can we achieve these goals? Or how can we even have a temporary compromise? Because that may be even just part of it is having a temporary compromise and agreeing like, oh, shopping for Christmas is not your jam. How can we come up with a compromise? Instead of me getting upset that I didn't get a gift for Christmas, maybe we can come up with an agreement like, okay, what is the dollar amount you want to spend on my Christmas gift? Give me that dollar amount and I'll go buy me a Christmas gift. At least that's what happens in our house, right? So we are really trying to work on expressing ourselves from a place of understanding each other. And this work is really for both of us. This work is really for us to like notice it and converse and express ourselves in ways that our partners can be receptive to. The other thing I want to talk about, the skill that I want to talk about is effectively repairing after or during a conflict, right? So sometimes we may have a conflict and we don't agree. We walk away from each other and we don't say a thing. When we think about like how maybe an unrepaired conflict can come up, sometimes we can use that against each other. Like, oh, well, we had this fight, we didn't solve it, we didn't repair it, and then a new fight shows up, and then we pick up the leftovers from the previous fight and we bring it into the new fight. So in order for us to really effectively repair, one of the things is that we have to be willing to take ownership of maybe how did we contribute to the conflict? How did we not listen? How did we show up in a way maybe that didn't move the conversation forward? Because in order for us to do that, like that, taking that massive responsibility requires us to really listen to each other, right? So some of the things we can maybe use, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, is the repair checklist. And the Gottman Institute has this checklist that, we can use some of these phrases to kind of express ourselves, see where we are, and converse, like share with our partner, like where we feel. So it could be the I feel statement. For example, I don't feel like you understand me right now, or, I feel defensive. Can you please rephrase that? Saying sorry, right? My reaction was too extreme. I'm sorry. Or let me try again. I can see my part in all of this. Let me start again in a softer way. And then getting to yes, right? It's like when we're having that conversation and we're now tuning in and it's like, oh, I feel like you're starting to convince me, or can we compromise here? Or what are your concerns? When we do that, what we're really setting the stage for is really understanding that we are trying to repair the thing, right? So we're not trying to maybe like tell the partners like you're on the wrong and I'm on the right, right? So we're trying to really and it leads to the de-escalation. When we have a fight, right, we can start de-escalating that conversation. So one of the things I wanted to touch on as far as processing fights or incidents that we regret is when we think about, we can share maybe how we felt during this argument, right? What are the unstated I statements that maybe we didn't share, right? We can then describe our experiences, like what was our subjective reality in that conversation? And then we can subjectively validate each other's realities, like, oh, that's how you experience it. Then we can both problem solve by identifying the triggers in our conversation. When did we get triggered? Why are these triggers for us? And then we take responsibility and finally create a plan to make this dialogue even better the next time. So I just want to touch on that as far as just the aftermath of a fight and processing the fights, right? So what processing really means is that we can talk about the fight without getting back into it again. So it needs to really be a conversation. It's like literally you guys are watching the flight, like you guys are watching a play, and you guys are in this audience and you're watching yourselves as the characters in the fight. So you're detached emotionally from the fight. So you have to have at least some emotional distance from that conversation, and then you process it. So first, again, you share how you felt, you describe your reality, right? Then you share what experiences or memories that triggered that. Then you acknowledge your role. And then last but not least, you plan constructively for how it's going to continue in the future. So sharing how you felt can be, I felt defensive. I felt totally flooded. I felt frustrated. I felt, unfairly picked on. That is the first step. And then the second step, again, describing your reality. You take turns and you can summarize how you felt, and you just don't describe your partner in this phase. Like, this is you talking about what you might have needed from your partner. And then maybe even use sentences like, I heard you saying, instead of saying, you said, right? What I heard you say was this. And then when your partner speaks up their experience, you can maybe summarize and validate their experience by saying something like, oh, it makes sense to me that you saw this and what your perceptions and needs were. I get it, right? So then you step into that compassionate and curious role where you now see, okay, I see how that upsets you. I see why it upset you. And validating our partner doesn't mean we agree with them. It just means that we understand that even a part of their experience, like, we understand a little bit of it. And then, like, checking in with each other, like, do we both feel understood? And if we both feel understood, then we move on. And if not, what we need to ask of each other is, what do I need to know to understand your perspective better? And then summarize what they said and then say, did I get it? Like, is there anything else maybe we can do that? I think also, like, sharing our triggers. When we know what the things that trigger us, our partners don't live in our heads. They don't know what's triggering for us. Like, it could even be like not getting a gift, and that's a trigger for you because it felt lonely. You felt excluded, right? And you're sensitive to that. And sharing that with your partner, like, how does that feel? And then when your partner also expresses their perspective, does any of those triggers make sense to you? And then when you take responsibility, like, you're just answering the question, like, what set us up for this miscommunication? Like, what was my state of mind? Was I stressed? Was I irritable? Was I, taking my partner for granted? Was I not emotionally aware? Whatever it is, we're just taking massive ownership and listening, like, attentively, right? And then what do you regret in that argument? Like, what was your contribution? And what would you like to apologize for? Right? Like, it could be, I'm sorry that I overreacted. I'm sorry that I was unreasonable. I'm sorry I attacked you. I'm sorry I didn't listen. If you accept your partner's apology, if you're the recipient, agree to agree. Like, say, yes, I accept it. And if not, state the need that you still need. The last step, which is now building that conversation, is sharing one thing that your partner can do to make this better an issue next time, right? So, for example, it also requires you to listen, like, hey, this is what my partner is asking for in this moment, and my goal here is to pay attention. My goal here is to listen. My goal here is to be receptive, because my goal here isn't to be right? And I wanted to touch a little bit about listening as far as, like, when you are having those conversations, even not in a conflict situation. Listening is so important because showing empathy and showing interest when we're listening, and then taking our partner's side when they're expressing something, and not always rushing to solve problems for them if they're just expressing how they feel. Like, just attuning and really listening to our partner and validating their experience. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about, because I think I covered the skills, but the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the act of, self-soothing and soothing ourselves and, soothing our partners too, the physiological soothing. One of the things I've worked on a lot for myself and with my coaching client is the idea of really tuning into our bodies and listening and being present in the body to know when we are triggered and to know how we experience our triggers, to listen to our bodies, to hear what is happening in our bodies, and to really, like, be present in our physical body, but also, like, connect the mind and the body. How do you self-soothe when you're flooded? And I think I covered this extensively in a previous episode, but I wanted to kind of just go through some ways in which you can self-soothe, and you can also help your partner self-soothe when they're flooded. So the first one is breathing, which we breathe automatically. Like our breathing is very independent of whether we're thinking about it or not. So when we breathe in a controlled manner, we're literally just like engaging our parasympathetic nervous system. So when you find yourself flooded, you may either hold your breath a lot or breathe very shallowly. And so just paying attention to how you're breathing and taking time being present in your inhales and exhales. The second one is relaxation, and that is just like doing a body scan and noticing where you feel tension in your body and maybe stretching it and relaxing them and tensing those muscles and then relaxing them, just like actively, again, tuning into your experience of the body. And then the third one is heaviness, just noticing where the muscles feel tense and just feel the heaviness. Warmth is also very important. It's just like feeling the warmth of the tension in each muscle group. Imagery like meditation, focusing on something for a few minutes, just listening to your body, just that tactile meditation can even be helpful, just like being in the here and now, feeling your feet on the ground. Those are just some tiny ways in which you can be here in the now. And you can also help your partner engage his own body in being in the here and now so that he knows what it feels like. I think one of the most important takeaways, especially when it comes to flooding, is to start just like noticing what is happening in your body when you're flooded. Is it your heart rate going up? Is it like your breathing is slowing down? Because your body, literally your brain thinks it's in danger. Again, those relaxation exercises will be helpful just to like help you soothe yourself, because what you need to know is when we feel flooded, our brains have been conditioned to like continue talking and continue acting. And what we're trying to teach our brain is when we feel flooded, it's actually time to look inwards, reduce the amount of physiological arousal, be in the here and now and be present, right? Because continuous flooding, continuous being triggered just creates more stress, overwhelm, and it actually impacts the immune system. So, we start seeing when we have issues with our health and it's as a result of just like this continuous flooding over and over and over again. One of the things that you maybe can start tuning in for yourself and your partner as signs that you're getting flooded, and you can literally just pause and like check your heart rate, is are you noticing, whether there's periods of long, like closing your eyes for a long time, or like eyelid flutters, like you've gone inside and you may be just censoring, right? Or stonewalling where they just stop talking. Or are you, hands on the hips, or you're turning your hips away from your partner? Are you not expressing positive affect? Biting the inside of your cheeks? Are you putting your hands on your face? It could be anger, like just pressing your lips together like this. Is it sadness where your brows start to draw up? Is it fear? And it could also be like automatic involvements, like playing with your hair or like, playing around with the pencil. Just behaviors are like, I'm not telling your brain, like, we're not actually here. Just maybe like noticing that your breathing is irregular, or you're not finishing your sentences, you're repeating yourself, you're omitting words, you're stuttering. Those are just like sometimes disturbances that we can tune into to kind of just see where we are in the conflict cycle and tune ourselves back in. So I really think that, the holidays it's an amazing time of year, but it's also a time where we see not our best selves and not the best selves of other people. When we can at least be attuned to our own emotional expression and be attuned to maybe what other people are experiencing, maybe we can de-escalate some of those conflicts before they even happen. But we can also start like speaking up for ourselves and asking for what we need in real time, rather than just expecting our partners to read our minds and creating these conflicts and fights that, they're not that significant. But especially at this time of year, we do start to see a lot of that. Like we do start to see that we're not looking at each other's point of view. We're not understanding each other's point of view. And I thought I should share this episode just because Christmas is around the corner and we're going to see, some conflicts happen even with family members. And again, a lot of these skills and pointers that I share, like you can literally use them for any relationship. It doesn't have to be with your partner, right? It could be your mother-in-law. It could be your sister-in-law. You can apply it in any situation, even maybe when the person doesn't know that you're doing this work and they may not be receptive to listening to you. just even maybe knowing like if they're not receptive and it doesn't go the way you wanted it to go, you can self-soothe and you can attune to yourself and you can take better care of yourself in that situation, no matter how they choose to react to you. One of the things I was thinking about was something that I read, and I just thought it was so interesting that when we are in conflict, a lot of the time, we're not really interested in listening to each other because we're very busy creating evidence for why we are right and when other people are wrong. One of the parts of like emotional adulthood and taking responsibility is really just being like, okay, how did I also contribute to this scenario that I'm in? Like, how did I create this result? That requires a lot of like, being willing to see where you've gone wrong and being willing to see how you're not showing up in ways that are consistent to who you are and who you truly are. So I really wanted to offer you this episode because it's come up in coaching with my clients. The holidays make them nervous, some of them at least. And I just wanted you to be prepared to, solve for conflict. And also, there's just like, this might be a soapbox for a second, but I love the 5 love languages. But I also think that sometimes we use the 5 love languages against our partners. And the reason I'm saying this is a soapbox because I talked about gifting and the holidays is that, we start to accuse our partners of not understanding that gifts and acts of service are our love language. Here's the deal. If that is your love language, don't make your partner guess. Just say it. Say, I love gifts. And if you don't know what gift to get me, here are some ideas. The idea that our partners should and this goes between both partners, right? The idea that our partners should just know our love language, tap into it, create time around it, build skills around it. I think it's like we're just assigning responsibility to other people for our emotions. And we all know, if you listen to this podcast, that other people don't create emotions for us. We create emotions because of the thoughts that we have about our circumstances. Therefore, we have the feelings. So if this is you and you want a gift for Christmas, don't set your partner up for failure. Just ask. It really is just use your words like we tell our kids. Use your words. That's it. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, right? And if you're a husband and you're listening and you're trying to read your wife's mind, don't. Just ask. Really, just ask. It's very simple. So I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk next week. All right, have a good day. Bye. I'm Shira Bergbauer, and you've been listening to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. New episodes are out every Monday. These episodes are created by me, Shira Bergbauer, and produced by Cassidy Mitchell. If you enjoyed this show or found it helpful, please rate it and review us on Apple Podcasts. If the concepts I share on this podcast resonate with you, or you're ready to change your relationships and mindset, I can help you. If you'd like in-depth, personalized support, I'd love to invite you to apply for my Life and Mindset coaching program. Just imagine you and I every week working together as I teach you the tools to up-level your life. To book your free 1-hour consultation call, go to www.stethoscopestoswaddles.com/consultation. You're doing a great job, Mama. Have a great week. Bye now.